Got some Troy Aikman cuts here for you. Troy Aikman on changing the play callers exactly. He was hanging out for his 8 beer, and I've never had an 8 beer myself. I do believe it's a pretty decent product.
I thought you always had an 8 beer minimum.
Yes, 8 beer minimum, different kind of 8 beers. Troy Aikman promoting his beer. He's out and about for the summer again, and there was the morning news ready to chat with him about his cold beer and his updated takes on the Cowboys. And you know, we're always here for it. I find Troy Aikman to be quite interesting. You know, maybe the best talker from a former player standpoint. And I think the best thing is, you know, nothing against Michael Irvin, who I love as well, but Troy almost seems to take a great joy in expressing his frustration with how the Cowboys have done it over the years and like pointing out their flaws. You know, he takes like pride in his ability to be critical of the team that he won 3 championships with.
Yeah, You're so right. You got Michael, who's definitely the homer, always the cheerleader. I'm going to find the positivity. Yeah. And then Troy's like, man, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. This team is ass.
Let me tell you what these slap Ds are up to next.
Not the good kind of ass.
No. Okay, here's Troy on changing play callers and the keys to making this offense come together.
I think that when you do change play callers, it's really a matter of how good is the play caller. Because I've been in those situations when Norv Turner came in, and immediately we went from the worst offense in the league to the 9th offense in the league, and then we won a couple of Super Bowls along the way. So it really just comes down to the quality of the coaching and how good they are at putting the team together and taking advantage of the various skill sets of the players that they have. I look forward to seeing what Mike does with this offense. I think the offense has done a lot of really good things over the years. But I also know what Mike did while he was at Green Bay, and they had a number of years where they were a very prolific offense, and a lot of the teams around the league were looking at what they were doing and trying to emulate a lot of that. So I never thought that Mike would give up play calling. I was surprised when he took over the head job with the Cowboys that he didn't then also take on the responsibilities of the play caller, because I know how much that means to him. I think it was the right decision at the right time, and I think right now it's probably the right decision at the right time as well.
He supports the idea. You know, it seems to me what he's pointing out is there's not really an issue changing play callers as long as the play caller you're going to is good, you know? Maybe the history of changing play callers, you're going to an inferior guy, you're going to an unproven guy, and it doesn't work out. I think that would be the counter to, like, if Broadus was here, he'd be saying, boy, you're changing play callers, you're changing the offense. That puts a lot of stuff in question. And from a historical standpoint, I bet it does. Like the probabilities historically of switching play callers and having it be better, I wouldn't be surprised if it turns out great, because something's broken, you know? It's rare, but I think when you're going to a guy like a Mike McCarthy, who obviously has skins on the wall and tons of experience and tons of success in this, I am assuming it's actually going to be better than Kellen Moore. And maybe that's my bad, but I don't know how Mike McCarthy could have come up the way he did, get all this credit for being a quarterback guru, and then run that Packers offense, bring Aaron Rodgers to these tremendous heights, and him not be better than Kellen Moore? I mean, that would be surprising to me.
I'm with you. I think that, you know, yes, I get, and especially what Brian's saying in terms of, hey, there's uncertainty, there's questions, because you've had so much turnover. You got Mike Solari, who wasn't coaching, but Mike Solari does have a track record of having good offensive lines. San Francisco, when they were going to 3 straight NFC championships under Harbaugh, 1 Super Bowl, he was the architect of that offensive line. In Seattle with Marshawn Lynch, they were running the football. They had a good offensive line. These guys have, to your point, a track record, and I think that, you know, the doubt is there's been some time since we've seen them do it. But I think from listening to guys like McVay, and when you hear people talk about Andy Reid and Kyle Shanahan, what sets apart the play callers is, hey, you know, you like with Brian Johnson taking over in Philadelphia, he was there. There's continuity. But is he going to have the same feel for when to dial up a play? And you'll hear about these guys, they'll call a run play out of a certain formation. They don't care what happens on that run play. But the whole point is they want to show the defense that look, because they are looking ahead 4 plays down in the call sheet, and they're going to dial up a similar play out of the same formation that then ends up busting out for 80 yards and a touchdown.
That's the Kyle Shanahan evil genius.
You're setting up the defense. And that's what sets apart the Shanahans, the McVays, the Andy Reeds, the Doug Petersons, the guys that have done this at an elite level for many years. And I think at one point Mike McCarthy was there. The question is, can he get back to that?
Yeah, that's going to be the biggest storyline throughout the first part of the season. You know, how does this happen? And then it's what, week 5 or week 6 that you meet Kellen Moore and the Chargers. Isn't it like the 5th or 6th game of the season? I think.
I think it is. Yeah.
So like everything is going to be building up to be like, okay, now it's a measuring stick situation, and that's what it's going to be all season long. And so I expect it to probably get better as the season goes. But there's so many veterans on this offense. I mean, your Lamb and Cooks, veterans. I know your tight end group is young, but you have Hall of Fame veterans on your offensive line, guys that have been around. Your quarterback's been around. I don't think it should be all that big of a deal. I mean, heck, Mike McDaniel's never actually called plays before. He goes to Miami and turns their offense from absolute constipated bull to one of the highest flying offenses in the sport.
Right.
Some of that has to do with the personnel for sure, but I think the Cowboys have added some personnel to make this thing better, like with a guy like Brandon Cooks.
Yes, and it's not like we haven't seen, first-year head coaches have success. Like, to me, just because you've had a coaching change doesn't mean things are always going to be poorly, or else why would any team in their first year ever have success?
Yeah. No, I think they're going to be a team that's uniquely positioned because they're not really changing play callers because, they're a team that needs to be rebuilt. They're, maybe frustrated by expectations not coming to fruition.
Absolutely.
And they're trying to take the next step from really, really good to the best. 972, if McCarthy's such a great play caller, why didn't he help Kellen Moore? I mean, it's a good question, but you could tell by the way Kellen Moore was off-put and wanted to leave how much autonomy he had. And I think, Mike McCarthy couldn't really help Kellen Moore. I think his attempts to help Kellen Moore were rebuffed, and that's why Mike McCarthy eventually wanted to take play calling away from him because he wanted to help. But Kellen Moore was like, hey, this is my deal. And Jerry Jones told everybody that's Kellen Moore's deal. He even did that going back 5 years. When he had Jason Garrett and Scott Linehan on staff, he said, I told everybody I want more Kellen Moore. So if part of taking the job as Cowboys head coach is accepting Kellen Moore because the Jones family wants to see him be your OC, it's going to take some time to massage that and wrestle back control of the offense. And it's going to be hard to suggest things to a guy that doesn't have to respect you because he can go to the Joneses and be like, you told me this is my offense.
I can tell you it wasn't just a McCarthy and Kellen Moore communication issue. I think there were there's a lot of frustration with some of the players in that locker room as well, that none of their desires within the offense, much like we've heard with Stephon Diggs and his frustration, but Kellen Moore did not implement other people's thoughts. It was Kellen Moore's offense, what he was wanting to do, and I think that ultimately rubbed people the wrong way, and ultimately it was time for a change. The offense staled and stalled the second half of every season for the last 3 years, and then when it mattered most, you get into the playoffs, you don't win. Why? Because the offense stunk. So somebody's got to be the fall guy for that, and it was Kellen Moore, and I hope he has great success with the Chargers. I don't think he's a bad offensive coordinator, but it was time for something different here in Dallas.
Dawson out of the nines from the 405, actually. If McCarthy helps Kellen, I guarantee the narrative would have gone to Mike micromanaging Kellen for damn sure. Yeah, I could see that, and we can only hope for the best, but as Zach pointed out, the farther we get from Kellen Moore leaving, the more we're hearing that a lot of people were, frustrated and are, kind of excited about getting a change there.